Something I've come to realize through my experience as a musician and someone that has used substances on the daily, and there's still certain substances I use on the daily, but I'm a lot more functional than I was. But being a musician, which has helped change my life, I started playing guitar when I was 20. Well, I guess I technically started when I was 16, but I just played here and there and didn't really progress a whole lot, just learned a couple chords. But when I was 21, I got really serious about music because I didn't know what I was doing with my life. And that's kind of been my ongoing struggle, is when you don't have per se a passion, like you like to have fun, go out and do stuff, do an art project. All that stuff is great and I enjoy doing it, but it's like, unless you're really good and stand out from the rest of the crop, it's just more of a hobby. And so, as a hobby with music, at the beginning, I found it to be quite, like music and alcohol to be quite a marriage together. And not anytime, but most of the time I played music. After my stint with sobriety that I had I wasn't technically completely sober the whole year, because there'd be a few times I'd have drinks, but I wasn't like getting drunk or like loaded on anything. That was about it for a while there. And I'd occasionally have some drinks like every other week or something. But after that, and I really got into exploring altered states and imbibing and getting high and all that stuff. I didn't really do it just to get loaded or whatever. I did it to fuel my musical journey, I guess, and the musical experience. But after a while, your relationship with it changes, and it used to be this energetic thing for me, and then as I got into my 30s, as it does for a lot of people, it changes, especially after using it so much and so copiously. It changed over time, as things do in this world with diminishing returns, and things get old, and you change. And so I changed, and it took me a while to really get out of it and find the joy again in music without that. But one thing that made it really hard too, and perhaps it's like you get in a certain ethos with a way of thinking or whatever, and you end up being surrounded by similar types of people on slightly different journeys, but people who also use substances and stuff. And a lot of the people I was around, or I'd see, who had more of a sober disposition and wouldn't really use substances, a small percentage of them were just amazing and really good at what they do, and just had a natural high and brain chemistry that they figured out and learned to work with, and that was their thing. But a lot of the sober people I saw were just kind of, in my perception at the time, just kind of boring, and just like, they'd peace out early, and like, I'm not very inspired to be sober by this person. Like, they'd even seem kind of miserable or bothered. And so I had to find it for myself, because I'm an upbeat kind of a guy, or at least that's my vibe. I'm not always as upbeat as I want. I'm not always the vibe that I want to be. And especially through my time with sobriety. And so that's what made it so challenging, was when you get really depressed when you're sober. It's not much incentive to stay sober. It's not very rewarding. And I was even on antidepressants and tried a few different antidepressants and found one that helped better than others, but not like any of those things cure some ongoing thing, but they make it easier. Like it takes a little bit of the edge off, so you don't get quite as neurotic, you don't get quite as low, but you also don't get quite as high, and like natural high. You know, I would like naturally, I guess it's kind of adjacent to being bipolar, as we all are a little bit, but not like diagnosable. And I was actually on a bipolar medication, but I wasn't diagnosed with that. But I would like naturally go from depressed to like manic and super excited and thrilled about things, and it would just be this back and forth, and that got really tiresome because yeah, you need consistency. You want to wake up in the morning, and even though it's a different day with different experiences, you want to have some kind of consistency and not just be like, oh, it's another depressing day, 3 or 4 days out of the week, it's just a depressive thing. And so that just get really discouraging, and you kind of lose hope because you're like if I can't find sustained joy throughout my life on a sober level, it's really hard. And I think that's how it is for a lot of people, and they lose sight of what that pure natural joy can be. And so that, I think, is part of the challenge with a lot of people with substance abuse addictions, because they're just trying to get more out of it, and it gives less and less every time. So this we know. But some people, you know, they have such a case of the fuck it's, they don't care. They just want to have some kind of joy, tap into a sense of that, even if it's just for a little bit, it's still worth it. And that's how I went so long drinking, is like the natural pain would be just about as bad as a hangover, like my natural depression. So it's like, well, either way, it's gonna suck. So that's how I did that for so long. But and I still have pain on the daily. I'm talking about internal mental grief and stuff about things that aren't even current, and I've spent so much time working through them and working on myself and past memories that were really difficult and things that happened that were really difficult. And the problem I have is when it's just constantly reoccurring, it doesn't seem to go away. I'm like, okay, I processed that, can we move on now? You know, like, I don't want to spend my whole life processing things. That's not the vibe. That's not the aesthetic that I'm going for. And I think it's okay I've been just triggered by that in life. It's no one's fault. It's the construct. It's the natural disposition. And I imagine a lot of people have this same struggle. And so that's what makes it so kind of insufferable, I guess, is a way to say it. And yeah, it's a grievous evil under the sun, as King Solomon would say. Grievous evil. When you have everything else in your life going well, like on the external, but internally you're in turmoil, and then everyone else around you is like, what the heck, man, like, you've got it great, why are you miserable? And that's why, like, you hear stories of like wealthy people. It's like, wealth doesn't necessarily make you happy, or being in a marriage doesn't, like, being in a relationship doesn't, like, just make you happy, and like this we know. But in certain circumstances it does, and it works when it's just the right chemistry, and the other person has the pieces of the puzzles that you don't have, and you coalesce together with a synergy that's really copacetic and sustainable. But obviously those things aren't guaranteed to like necessarily complete you or whatever. And oh god, I'm losing my train of thought on what I was getting to there. Yeah, This happens frequently for me. And adjacent, here I'll just go off on another limb. Adjacent to the mental health struggles is if you have any kind of attention deficit, or you're just going fugue states where you're not present. There's blips of that all through my life. That's been something from my childhood that just has always been there, and it's very frustrating. It's like I'll think of something, and this happens to all of us, but it happens more to some than others, and it's where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna grab that, I'm gonna do this, and then a second later I forget. And this isn't even just being stoned, because of course that kind of thing happens when you're stoned. But this is something that's just been going on always for me. I'll be in the shower and put the conditioner on before the shampoo, and just tons of small stuff, to the point that all the small stuff just is so aggravating and annoying, to the point where it's like, why is my life like this? In fact, if anything, cannabis has actually kind of helped me slow down enough to kind of remember things a little better, ironically. Things are just quite different for me than a lot of people. I know it works that way for others as well, but especially when you're younger, you just totally space out. You're just dumb if you get too stoned. You need to learn to work with it. But the attention deficit thing, that's real, and that really plays a part with the mental struggle parts, because you just want to be able to have awareness and consistency of consciousness. We just want to maintain consciousness to be able to flow easily with clarity and ease through our life. And it's like, why isn't that just a given thing? Why does there have to be such internal struggles constantly? It's like, okay, I know what the struggle's like. Can we move on? Maybe at least experience a different struggle. But in this life, it's really not that good of a learning school. It's more of just kind of a dystopia. And it's like, okay, I get it. I've learned, I've experienced it. I want to experience other things. I want to learn other things. It's valid angst. It's valid to be triggered by stuff like that and have it not be acceptable. And you can choose not to accept it. And that's where I go quite contrary to a lot of other spiritual people who are like, you just have to accept it and do the work. And I'm like, I'm not going to surrender to that anymore and just accept it, just bend over for it, and just, it's like, no, I want to have integrity of my aesthetic, and I think that's totally acceptable for me in my disposition to, it's like, refuse to go that way. That's not the way I want to learn. It's not the way I choose. And once you wield your sentient autonomy, or your sentient choices in that way, what I've said before is, I believe it is our divine birthright as consciousness bearers to be able to choose what we want to do through life and how we want to be. And yes, we do evolve, but it's not like how it should or could be. And I think that's important to recognize and acknowledge. And instead of just letting ourselves be beat into submission for this modality of life. And I'm just a stubborn nut in that way. Or I've become a stubborn nut in that way. I was not always. I was overly humble and would abase myself and be all, I'm sorry for this, I'm sorry I was that way, I'm sorry. I'm like, I'm not sorry anymore. The only thing I'm sorry about is being so fucking sorry my whole life. No, I'm not sorry. I'm trying my best. I'm doing my best. I want to be a good person. I want to be okay so I can help others, instead of just being another person that needs help. There's too many people that need help and not enough people who are okay enough to really help others. I do help others, but I could help more. I could be more. And I'm continuing to grow in that, but it definitely feels like a couple steps forward, a couple steps back, and just getting fucking confused by this life and like how things go and how things work. And yeah, I think all these things are important to acknowledge. And even though we don't, even though, it doesn't work for a lot of us, it does work for some people. And it's just different for everyone. And I wish I could get back to remembering that one thing I was going to say about like people it doesn't even work, or like who have even people who have a lot of money, they don't necessarily have joy from that. But I'll tell you this about money, it sure freaking helps. If you have a jet ski or something, how can you be depressed when you're on a jet ski or something? You know what I mean? It's like people who have all this money and are still miserable, they're just, and this is my own limited bias, I guess, that I'm not understanding how their disposition of life is, but I'm like, they're just not interesting or creative in the first place if they're not even into trying to have fun. And all the times I've had fun and been on outings, road trips, being out on the water, ice skating, paintballing, playing music, all fun stuff. I love doing fun stuff like that. But that stuff makes me feel good. It's like the depression is so in the background, or I've just become so used to it. The only thing that's present in those moments is my joy and excitement and thrill in the thing that's happening in the present moment. That's fun. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say in this little video. Just got to work. It's a very late start for me today because I've really been struggling with sleep. Sleep is another huge part of good mental health. And all the people I know who get good sleep are generally happier people. I would just like to be able to have the choice to have a good night's sleep. And even through my sobriety, I'd struggle with that. And that just doesn't seem fair. And it's probably not fair. But if we go on with it, I don't want to be a victim. I don't want to look like a victim. I don't want to present that way. That's not who I'm trying to be. But we're all kind of victims to the shortcomings and limitations that are here. And I know that's a distasteful way to look at it, but it's also a realist way to look at it. Even though I don't identify as that because I don't want to be that, it still is part of this reality for us. And I know this isn't the most uplifting video, but I'm not necessarily trying to do just uplifting videos, even though I am a pretty positive person in spite of all this resistance I get here. I just like to talk about things that are real and real struggles, and I think that's important to talk about. And yeah, it's not fun, it's uncomfortable, but we need to talk to someone about it. I've gone to a lot of counseling throughout my life, processed a lot of this stuff, but it's not like it just goes away. And that's the hard bit to swallow, is it's like, oh, it's just gonna keep going like this, even though I have a new perspective around it all, and I'm starting to grok with it a little bit, make sense of it a little bit, but then once it starts to make sense, it all gets blown a bunch of holes through it. And yeah, this isn't the most positive video. There are also positive videos I post and will post, because there are beautiful things in this life as well that somehow make it worth it, that we keep pushing through, even though I don't consent to a lot of the things in my disposition of this reality and how it comes about. And in spite of all my resistance to that, I'm still here. I'm still doing it because I care. I care about my friends, people in my life, my community, and I am doing things to help. I am an artist. I am a creator. I am a seeker. I'm someone that wants to learn and grow and be the best version of myself. Not just for me, but for you as well. I hope that's encouraging.